Remember that Tuesday in November when huge parts of the internet just stopped working? You try to visit a website, open an app, and bam, error page. Well, the culprit was a massive outage at Cloudflare, which is one of those foundational pillars of the web we all rely on. So today, let's perform a little digital autopsy and figure out exactly what went wrong. And look, this wasn't just some minor hiccup. I mean, Cloudflare's own CEO, Matthew Prince, said it himself. Any outage is unacceptable. They know just how critical they are. When Cloudflare stumbles, pretty much the entire internet feels it. This quote really sets the stakes for how incredibly serious this event was, not just for them, but for all of us. So, the billion-dollar question is, what could possibly bring such a critical piece of internet infrastructure to its knees? Was it some massive cyber attack? A shadowy state-sponsored group? Or was it something else entirely? Let's put on our detective hats and start digging for the truth. To understand the cause, we have to start at the crime scene. We need to look at what this outage actually felt like from the outside and get a sense of just how widespread the damage really was. What you're seeing here is a full-on cascade failure. It wasn't just one thing. Of course, the core services that deliver website content failed. That's what most of us saw. But behind the scenes, oh, the damage was so much deeper. Security features meant to stop bots just wouldn't load. Developers were completely locked out of their own systems. Critical data storage was spitting out errors, and you couldn't even log into things. It was a total systemic, multi-layered meltdown. So with the internet basically on fire, Cloudflare's engineers were in a mad scramble to find the cause. And their first suspect, well, it was a logical one, especially given the chaos. But it turned out to be completely wrong. In a high-pressure situation like this, what's the first thing your mind jumps to? You're under attack, right? The sheer scale and, frankly, the weirdness of the outage absolutely looked like some kind of sophisticated, coordinated cyber assault. And you can totally see why they thought it was an attack. The errors weren't constant. The system would fail, then kind of recover, and then fail again over and over every 5 minutes. It was mimicking an adaptive attack. And to make things a million times worse, their own status page, hosted on completely separate infrastructure, went down at the same time. What a terrible coincidence. It looked exactly like a targeted assault. This quote from their internal chat log, wow, it puts you right there in the digital war room with them. They were genuinely worried they were facing a new wave of those massive DDoS attacks that had been making headlines. You can just feel the pressure and the misdirection in that moment. They were chasing a ghost, but they didn't know it yet. So, if it wasn't a huge attack, what was it? Well, the truth turned out to be way more ordinary and, honestly, way more terrifying in its simplicity. This is the part of the story where the engineers finally had that aha moment and found the real culprit. And here it is, the full domino effect. It all started with a single, totally routine permissions change on a database. That tiny, innocent change caused a query to accidentally return duplicate data. That, in turn, bloated a critical configuration file, literally doubling its size. And when that huge file got pushed out across their global network, it smashed into a hard-coded memory limit. The entire system just panicked and crashed. So before the change, a query asking for data returned a nice, clean list. Simple. But after the change, which ironically was meant to improve security, that same query started spitting out duplicates. This simple mistake is what doubled the size of the output, creating a ticking time bomb. A change designed to make things better somehow broke everything. And this number, 200. This is the whole shebang right here. The bot management system had a hard-coded limit. It was designed to set aside memory for a maximum of 200 features to keep things running fast. The new bloated config file suddenly had more than 200. The system just wasn't built to handle it. It had no idea what to do. And here it is. This is the digital smoking gun. This is the exact error message that brought the network to its knees. When the system tried to load that oversized file, it hit the limit and panicked. This single, cryptic line of code is what millions of us around the world experienced as a broken internet. Okay, so once the team identified this tiny, fatal error, the mission changed completely. The focus shifted from investigation to firefighting. How on earth do you fix a problem that's already spread to every single corner of your massive global network? This timeline really shows you the pressure they were under. The bad change goes out at 11:05. Just over 20 minutes later, the first errors hit. But look at this. It took them over 3 hours just to stop the bad file from spreading further. And then it took almost 3 more hours to get the fix deployed and clean everything up.
It's a stark reminder of how complex it is to fix things in a system of this scale. And the fix itself? Conceptually, it was pretty simple, but it had to be surgically precise. First, they had to stop the bleeding. They shut down the system that was automatically creating the bad file. Second, they manually pushed a good, working version of the file into the system and forced a network-wide restart to load it. It was basically a digital reboot for a huge piece of the internet. So, with the fire out and services coming back online, the work was far from over. This is where the final and maybe the most important phase began, learning from this massive failure to make sure it can never, ever happen again. And in their postmortem, the company was incredibly transparent and accountable. This direct apology from the CEO shows they really understood the gravity of the situation and their deep responsibility to the millions of us who depend on them every day. So what did they actually learn? Well, first, they're now treating their own internal configuration files with the same level of suspicion as if it were outside data. Second, they're building better kill switches, like big red emergency off buttons to turn off features globally if something goes wrong. And finally, they're doing a massive review of their core systems to hunt down any other hidden single points of failure, just like this one. So when you boil it all down, this entire global internet catastrophe was caused by one single, flawed assumption buried deep inside a complex system. The assumption that a file would never have more than 200 features. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other hidden assumptions are propping up the digital world we rely on every single day, just waiting for the right little domino to fall?